Right, okay. Everybody be quiet for a few seconds and then I'll go.
This is exciting, isn't it?
It's right. Oh, fucking hell. What's going on? Right, I'm sipping my beer now.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Right.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of Picky Bastards podcast. And this is our best albums of 2018 episode, even though it is nearly the end of February. So, you know,
we're efficient and organised.
Yeah, we're going to pretend that it's because we wanted to spend time taking in all the albums that other people had recommended, but it's actually because we are quite useless.
Absolute piss-ice, yeah.
But anyway, I'm Fran Slater, and I'm here with Nicholas Parker.
Hello.
How's Nick?
I'm doing all right, thank you. How are you?
And we're... Oh, you just know how I was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that. You don't usually do that. Yeah, and we're also that's why I was so taken aback. And we're also here with Matt Paul, kind of. He's in New York. How are you, Matt? You good?
Hi there.
Stop asking me how I am.
I'm good. How are you?
Listen, you caring picky bastards, basically. Yeah, we're all really friendly and nice. Yes.
Lovely. Well, anyway, we were also meant to be here with Mr. Nirmal Trivedi, who was one of the founders of Picky Bastards. He was going to join us for this episode, but sadly, he is not well.
Yeah, he's not very well.
Because we've already had several delays, we've had to move forward with it. So, sorry you're not here, Nirmal, if you ever listen to us anyway. But we will be representing your album of the year on your behalf. So
he'll be back at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll have him in. So before I get started and tell you what the albums are, we're just going to do something professional for the first time on the podcast and ask you guys, if you're a first-time listener, please just sit back and see if you hate us or not. If you've listened a few times, then it'd be great if you could subscribe to the podcast, follow us at Picky Bastards on Twitter, and if you listen after March the 6th, we'll also be launching our very own website at pickybastards.co.uk. So
and that'll have all the podcasts and also all kinds of articles on all kinds of subjects.
New articles, all music though, not all kinds of subjects. There's not going to be nothing about elephants. So yeah, hopefully you will see us there. So anyway, the plan today is each of us, including Nirmal, who isn't here, will tell you our favourite albums of 2018, and they'll be announced throughout the show. But we picked 6 albums from other publications and their albums of the year, and they were from Pitchfork. It was Be the Cowboy by Mitski. From the Vinyl Factory, it was Devotion by Tirzah. From Piccadilly Records, it was Child Queen by Khadja Bonet. I don't know how you say that, but that's what I'm going with.
Sounds about right.
From Drowned in Sound, it was Double Negative by Low. The Guardian went with Christine and the Queens and Chris. And Needle Drop went with Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. So we were going to go straight to Nirmal, so we will go straight to Nirmal, and we will talk about an album that we've already talked about on the podcast, because Nirmal's album of the year was Joy as an Act of Resistance by Idols. So who wants to kick us off on what they still think about Idols?
I can talk about it, yeah. I thought, and I'll be repeating a little bit of what I said before, but basically this was very close to the best album for me as well. I thought it was a really, really tough decision for me when I get to mine between this and the one I chose ultimately. I think it's absolutely visceral energy album. It's incredibly politically astute, which is really fascinating. It's incredibly witty and funny, amusing. And it has, I've got to say, the best lyric of any album, I think, of the year, which is I Am Dennis Skinner's Molotov, which I talked about in the last podcast,
on that one.
Which I think is just the greatest phrase in 20th century lyrics.
What's the lyric before it? I am... I laugh at fascists till the heads fall off. I am Dennis Skinner's Molotov. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
I think it's a worthy contender for album of the year, and all the debates. We were just talking before actually about the debates with Sleaford Mods and stuff, weren't we? And all the arguments have been going on between Sleaford Mods and this band. And I have to say, I really would go with this band as the more impressive of the two, frankly. I think
more impressive and more relevant, and I feel like the bands that are starting to sort of jump on Idols back, to me, they're trying to promote their albums that are coming out and they're a bit jealous of how well Idols have done. That's how I see it personally.
Because their rise has been really, really fast. I feel like there's only 2 albums in, and they're suddenly absolutely the watchword for new punk and kind of the energy. So it's great. Yeah,
and for a couple of middle class bands to be telling another band they're too middle class is just kind of confusing, to be honest.
Yeah. So
stop it, Sleaford Mods.
Jealousy is the key word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just calm down. But anyway, so and also I think that they have some really, really interesting other kind of political sentiments. They talk about immigration a great deal. They talk about masculinity in a couple of the songs in a really, really interesting way, which I think is, I don't know that I've heard any band, certainly any punk band, doing that kind of thing in recent times. So I thought that's really, really amazing. So yeah, all round, I can't fault it really. I've
just thought of this, but they've almost got like a hip hop attitude to the message sometimes. Like you get a lot of hip hop albums that'll talk about these kind of things nowadays, but you don't often hear it cross over to the guitar music, do you? It's just quite interesting, I think. But yeah, Matt, what about you? Any changes on this album since we last spoke about it, or?
Not really. If anything, it's grown on me more. Again, like Nick, it ran my first place very hard. I might even be able to say.
We're going to talk about the top threes at the end, and you're just stepping all over them, people. Come on.
His scoring system is going to be upset. He's really destroyed.
It could be many things ran it very hard. It could be lots of things really equal at the top.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from like what Nick said, I think I've really kind of dug back into the previous album as well, and I think as good as the first album was, it was the big thing for me was this was a big step forward for them, growing creatively, and also in kind of the music and message that they want to put across is actually incredibly relevant for right now. It's music that matters as opposed to something that's just fun to listen to, and so that's why I also think it's definitely should be in every conversation.
Definitely, yeah, it definitely belongs in all these lists, and I think I'll say I'm still in love with this album. Still in love with how they use like joy and optimism as a counter to all the things they see wrong in society. The message is amazing. I think they're one of the most exciting bands going at the moment in anywhere. Last time I said in the UK, but I think anywhere really. Just to say one thing that did kind of I did notice going through it more this second time through on a playlist is that actually I do think it tails off a little bit towards the end of the album more than I noticed before. I think up to the song Great, which is like song 9 out of 11 songs, I think it's out of 12 songs, I think it's very, very strong, but then maybe the last 3 songs kind of tail off a little bit for me, which is why one of the reasons maybe it didn't smash the top of my list, I think, is that it doesn't finish as strongly as it starts, but it starts so strongly that I'm not holding that against it as an album. I just think it doesn't end that brilliantly. But I can
actually see what you're saying to some extent, particularly, and this is really picking holes in it, but Rottweiler at the end there, the last one, ends with like a kind of cacophony of them sort of shouting, keep it going, and that stuff. So, which I thought was, it's fine, but it didn't seem like a really punchy, because they had so many songs that just sort of nailed it, and then at the end just kind of cut off, really hard, and I thought that really worked well. So I wouldn't say it didn't wow me as much as the earlier stuff. It may be the first half of the album or the first 3/4 sort of carried you through the rest of it a bit more than it was actually consistent.
I mean,
all the way
it's
through.
all great though. It is outstanding, and then I think "Cry to Me" is a cover, which is always a cover's a cover, isn't it? If it's an interesting cover, but it doesn't have the same effect, because I think the big thing for them is their songwriting and their lyrics, and so when they're doing a cover, it's kind of fun live, but maybe not the best way to end the album. But that is, I am, like you say, picking holes.
And how many punk bands can say their lyricist is the most important element? I think that's quite an interesting angle. That's really remarkable. Yeah,
definitely. So So anyway, right. So on to the 6 albums that weren't picked by one of us. We are going to go to, if any of you remember, the Mercury Prize episode where I annoyed the hell out of everyone with my 1.5 minute countdown and a very obnoxious alarm. We are bringing that back because so many of you loved it, I'm sure. So I'm going to ask a question which all 3 of us are going to answer, and we're going to get a 1.5 minutes each to answer it, and then we'll shout at each other at the end about how wrong each one of us was.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to Matt first.
Cool. Oh, great.
Are you ready, Matt?
I'm so ready.
I will allow you to say the title of the album before I start the countdown. So I'm going to ask you now, which of the 6 albums was the most relevant in your eyes to 2018? You're allowed to say the title.
It's Mitski's album, Be the Cowboy.
Starting the timer.
And so, for me, this was one of the best albums on the list. It encompasses a bunch of topics, but really at its core, it's about kind of love, self-reliance, vulnerability, honestness, and restlessness. And I think all of those topics are really important for now, but also they're kind of relevant for every single year. But the amount of honesty and how she kind of lays herself bare and how she's feeling or has felt in a myriad of different relationships in the past, I think speaks to how truthful a lot of bands are being now in the public eye. I think that's a kind of a newer phenomenon in that the public persona is much more honest and true. And so musically though, I think it was actually quite restrained in some ways, because in her previous albums she was much more rock influenced, and she still got that harder edge, but she really kind of expanded kind of her musical vocabulary almost, but she used a lot more different approaches, and then but still brought the rock out when it was appropriate. And you could kind of see that in the way that kind of Geyser builds in the first song.
I mean, at least you got to the end of a sentence.
He made it sound like he was finishing on time, but actually, I'm sure he had plenty more to say.
You were going to say more, weren't you?
I could talk for hours on this one. I really that one.
You're allowed to say a little bit more at the end when we come back to all join in.
Yeah.
But for now, same question, Nick. Which album?
Okay.
Well, let me get to the timer again. It's very important. Which one felt the most relevant to 2018 in your eyes, Nick?
Okay, I'm going to say Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. And the reason for that is that, in case anyone hadn't noticed, we live in dark times. We live in a really harrowing, awful end times of the world. And this album really symbolises that extremely well. And despite the fact that Idols, for example, we talked about earlier, is such a positive sort of spin on those negative elements and sort of tries to fight back in various ways, I can't say that it really represents the state of play as it stands right now in the way that this Daughters album does. It was extremely exhausting. That's the overarching word I would use. And that doesn't mean by that I necessarily love the album. We'll talk more about the ratings and positions of them later. But I thought it was really symptomatic of the way that things are at present. This furious frenzy of kind of industrial sound. There were particularly I think actually Daughter, the song Daughter itself, was my favourite song on the album. It was dark, but it had like a kind of really interesting hook, a really kind of gripping hook as well, which I thought worked really, really well. So overall, I think, it's a powerful album. And even though I think Fran probably, we'll see what he says. But, I'm not going to assume. But so as far as I'm concerned, it was a really powerful album and a really relevant one for this year.
Ooh, 8 seconds.
Nice. I win.
Skills, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to answer the same question, so Nick can take
Okay, I got the timer.
charge. Interesting, before I even start, we've all picked different ones for this question. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you ready to tell me the name of the album?
I am. The name of the album is Chris by Christine and the Queens. So I picked this album because I think it speaks to and about both the good and bad sides of the last year or so. So I think this last year, and particularly this last year, but also the last few years, has seen female representation in music sort of massively increase. And I think Christine has been kind of at the forefront of that. And I love that throughout this album, she is unashamedly sort of aggressive about her sexuality, her identity, and her thoughts on gender roles. That felt like a very current thing to me and a very sort of relevant thing to now. And I think she's at the forefront of that kind of thing at the minute. So that felt really representative of the positive elements in the music industry in the last year. But then she also very clearly recognises and questions how far we still have to come in both music and society. So there's a song called What's Her Face? And I think that's the biggest representation of that side of it, of the negativity that's still around. So the idea in that song, she talks a lot about her still being in the background, still being, like, the song's called What's Her Face? It's kind of, she's dismissed, she's been judged for something. And then there's the line about her name becoming a slur, as in, what she represents is almost also an insult, which I thought was really clever. And also, on top of that, I just think this is a really sort of stonking album. I think, like, full of really funky, fun songs. It's got a bit message, but it's also really fun. I love it.
I think you had more actually. I don't buy it. I don't buy that you were about to stop there. I think you probably had loads more to say.
Well, I've got a whole theory.
You saw me move. You saw me move my hand towards
I've got a whole theory about Christian and the
thing.
Queens that I want to dig into. But I probably wasn't going to fit it in the minute.
But then you realise that it's not your podcast, so you can't just talk.
So I'm going to give the theory at some point in the next 10 minutes, just so you know.
All right. We'll turn off the recorder at that point. So,
anyone want to come back on any of that before I give my theory?
you're going to tell us all about it now?
Yeah, I'm going to give you my theory. Shall I just get that out of the way?
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So I don't know. He gets basically 1 minute 30 and then an additional 10 minutes.
This isn't about why the album's good. This is just my theory about Christian and the Queens.
Okay, go for it.
I basically think Michael Jackson never died. And he just continued having surgery to the point when he turned into Christine and the Queens. And that is who we have now, because it's just Michael Jackson, how he would be now. It's the same music, it's the same. I mean, it's probably got a little more intelligent lyricism, but this sounds like a Michael Jackson album to me. Anyone else?
Really?
Hear that? Yeah.
I very much agree. I actually noted down that this was kind of.
Oh, you've been serious?
I am, yeah.
I thought you were just taking the piss out of me. You just wanted me to shut up.
No, give me some time to take the piss out of you later. No, for now, I'm actually going to agree with you.
Wow.
No, I thought it was very, very MJ influenced, extremely polished, and I actually. It's not really, as many people would probably guess, a genre that I would naturally jump into. Yeah. But I couldn't deny that it was really well put together. Really kind of, well, it was a little bit sort of staccato for me, which is kind of grating sometimes. It was kind of slightly irritating, kind of stops and starts. But I think that's part of the genre to have that energy, that kind of restrained, kind of almost bursting through energy, which I thought worked really well. I thought, this is a big statement now, but to me, it sounded a lot like Off the Wall. You know, I don't know if it's absolutely. Yeah. That level, no, I do know it is not that level, but it's that kind of thing. I think, yeah. So, and
I think it's amazing to see someone doing that kind of that music in this way at the minute. And actually, you know, we've both come up with Michael Jackson, and obviously there's a Prince comparison and stuff there. But I think, very excited. I don't know. I'm scared to. I don't know if I can ask you, Max. I don't know if she's coming up for one of your further questions.
She will do. I'll just say I thought it wasn't that good an album relative to what else has been out this year.
Right.
The people you've mentioned so far, you should. I think if you listen to Janelle Monáe's album,
I hate that album.
Really?
I can't stand it.
I thought that blew this out of the water completely.
See, it
covers a bunch of the similar topics, and it's much more interesting.
I just didn't.
Much more diverse as well.
No.
Okay, I'm glad that's cool. Typically complex response from Fran.
So. Does anyone? What else? Cool. So what else do we have? We had Mitski and Daughters. I'd like to talk briefly about Mitski.
Go for it.
When I can find what I wrote about her. So Mitski, I really liked all of her previous albums.
I'm not familiar with any of her previous albums. Yeah, how many are there?
I think
even
maybe this was a fifth.
Yeah,
fifth. But this was really dull, I thought. I mean, I barely went back to it at all after the first 5 or 6 listens, and I found some of it really off-putting. There's the song "Me and My Husband," where she just sings repeatedly, "Me and my husband, we're sticking together," and I just thought, I just don't care. Yeah. Like, I honestly don't care. I just thought that song was absolute dross. There's a couple of good moments, 2 dancers and a horse named Cold Air I liked. But overall, I felt like this was full-on background music.
You didn't get the fact that it's like that song was "Me and My Husband" seems like kind of dark, even though it's got the really like jaunty piano over the top.
He never does that. He never. If he just takes it at face value. That's his.
If the music's crap, I'm not going to spend much time trying to dig into what it's actually trying to say. It just this album did nothing for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
At all.
Yeah, I'm not going to raise any comments about it right now because it's going to come up later in my list. So I'll just pass on that. Yeah. So
cool.
If other people didn't talk about Daughters, though, you're welcome to.
I can't say anything about Daughters right now.
All right.
Can you, Matt?
I can. Yeah. The thing I found with Daughters is, like you're saying, it's kind of overwhelming and kind of disorienting because it just felt at times just like you're being attacked by this just wall of noise.
Oh, I totally agree.
And I get what you're saying about it being relevant to this year because it is hugely dark. And I had problems with this album in the sense that I could only listen to it at certain times. I had to be in the right mood.
Okay.
Other times I just couldn't listen to it. And it isn't an album that ever changed my mood. It just, if I was in a kind of darker mood, then this was perfect because it made me feel justified and emphasized that darkness in a way I enjoyed, but like not it. Yeah, a lot of the time I'm not feeling like that. So a lot of the time it was just I couldn't take anything from the album.
You're not really into like industrial dark music then, Matt? Is that what you're telling us?
Are
we meant to be shocked by this?
I think you can be into industrial dark music and not like this album.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say I'd say
that's what I'm
exactly that point. I think that some people do it and they can change encompasses more emotions within that industrial dark music. This felt very kind of monotone in its emotion.
Okay.
But I still enjoyed it.
But I'm not allowed.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
So
I think at that point we're going to move on to Mr. Nicholas Parker's album of the year. So Nick will get a minute and a half to convince us why his album of the year. And we might all, at the end we're going to give our top threes and Nick change our minds here with this speech.
Okay.
You get to say the name of the
Oratory,
album.
that's what this is, yeah. So the name of the album is Cocoa Sugar by Young Fathers.
Go.
So, as I had mentioned, this was a really tough decision for me with Idols. So I struggled with that for quite a while. But I actually want to say that there are 5 reasons why I think this is a better album than the Idols album. Yeah, so the first reason is, as with the previous albums, this experimental song construction is really unparalleled in bands they're going today. This is the freshest, newest kind of song construction I've heard in any band that's going, certainly in Britain at the moment. Secondly, the live energy of this band is really palpable in all the recordings. I actually saw him in a live gig with Fran a few weeks ago, and that was incredible, but I think they also managed to carry it through the recordings as well. Thirdly, the vocal harmonies in all 3 singers manages to be really, really beautiful, even though the music is quite abrasive at times. And I think that's quite a remarkable achievement to juxtapose those 2 things together. Fourthly, politically, it has kind of the most elegant and powerful statements. Like Border Girl was a good example. But I also really picked up on Wow this time through as I listened to it again, which I thought was really amazing. What a time to be alive. I'm going to put myself first. Everything is so amazing. I said wow, which I thought was a really fantastic set of lines. And then the last reason is, in my opinion, they have the best single of the year. In my view, which is the name of the song, not my opinion, is the best single of the year. So that's the 5 reasons they're better than Idols. And I still got it in under 1/3.
Just say a few more words.
No, I don't.
What?
Silence.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said at the end then. What? Oh, it's not gone off.
It will.
We can stop before.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay, very good.
I'm really victorious.
Well done. Matt, Young Fathers, come back at you.
I love this album. It's a fantastic album, and I think probably the easiest of theirs to actually kind of digest.
I can see
I think
that.
they're a little bit more linear in like some of the songs and like the point they're trying to make.
I think that's a very conscious choice, actually. I would say, in this case, from what I've heard.
I think, I wouldn't be surprised because they can definitely obfuscate quite efficiently as well. And so for them to actually make that choice to make something that's quite clearly political and actually have it readable and digestible at a much easier level is obviously them making a point in that sense as well. I agree, in my view, it's in my top 5 songs of the year.
Okay.
I haven't been able to place it within that.
Have you placed the number 1? Is there a number 1
single, you mean?
Yeah, like if you're saying top 5, or are they just
there
randomly?
There is, but we'll hear about that later.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Cool.
But yeah, I love the way it builds. There's so many good tracks on it.
Would you say then? Are you saying then this is your favourite album of this band, as well as the clearest, the most digestible? Is your favourite of theirs? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Actually, I really love the one before the one they won.
White Men
Dead.
Black Men too.
No, the one before that.
Dead.
Yeah. That was absolutely amazing in terms of the pitch bending and sort of things they did with that. It was amazing. Anyway.
I might like it most just because I've listened to it the most. So maybe I should try the other ones more.
Yeah, you should. Work it out.
Well, clearly you've just heard I went to see Young Fathers recently. I've got this album on vinyl. I love them. I do love the band. I love all 3 albums. So I'm not slagging them off when I say this.
Here you are.
No, I'm not. I'm seriously not. But something I noticed while listening to this album next to some of these other really good albums on this playlist, because I think there's a lot of good stuff on this playlist, is that there are a few forgettable songs among the really good ones. Like, so when they're at the best, for me, my favourite songs, in my view, Tremolo, Turn, and Border Girl. There isn't much on this playlist that can live with those songs. But then songs like See How, Fee Fi, Holy Ghost, and Wire, they're kind of a bit nothingy, which I don't think happened on other albums.
Wow.
Not nothing like...
Absolutely
they're
disgraceful.
better than most filler on other people's albums.
Oh, most filler.
But they are filler. They are filler.
They're not filler.
They are filler.
I think when I listened to it the first few times, before we actually put it on the playlist, I would have agreed with Fran. Now, after spending a longer time with them, those songs that are in between, that are like obvious high points, have grown even more on me than
See, I've gone the other way. But then something I should probably say about that is that even prior to us putting this playlist together, I listened to this album so much that sometimes you do just start to get a bit fed up.
You've fed enough of it.
So I might be at that point at this minute where the big tracks are still there for me, but maybe I need to take this album away for a couple of months. Oh, that sounds weird. Maybe I need to take myself away
to the farm
for a little bit, and then maybe I'll come back and I'll think differently. But that was it's not a big thing, and it's still a great album, but I think again that might be why it didn't reach the top of my list.
Yeah, it's not a big criticism. It's just that 4 songs off this album were better than most filler.
Yeah,
that's a pretty bold and
they're better than filler. They're better than filler.
Wow. Okay, fair enough.
They're better than filler.
You're allowed to have your opinion, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm going to go first on this second question.
Yep.
Go for it.
Because that's the way I'd planned it, but Nermal's messed all my plan up.
Oh.
I can't remember how I'm doing this. Sorry, we've just taken a pause while I find how to find my clock again.
There we go.
Nick's
all right.
Got it.
So you say what you think.
So the second... Well, we need to say the question first.
Yes, we do.
The second question, and this is again going back to the 6 other albums, is which album were you most surprised to see at the top of an Album of the Year playlist? So for me, it was Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want. Am I starting? And it won't take me long, really. This was the easiest question for me by far. I mean, this was a strong playlist with 9 albums that ran from absolutely amazing to still pretty decent, and then 1 album that was just fucking awful. I could not stand the Daughters album. It was barely music, I think. Less Sex.
Enough for you, that's what you're saying.
Less Sex was the only song on there that had anything really going for it. I thought that was a good song. But the main problem, it's not the heaviness, it's not the industrial sounds, it's not that. It's that every other song apart from Less Sex sounded exactly the same. And they droney, they were whiny, they were flat, and they just didn't really go anywhere. Like, it was every song sounds the same. I can't tell you which one's which. His delivery's just annoying. He mumbles for a bit, then he shouts for a bit, and then he mumbles for a bit longer, and then he shouts for a bit longer, and then mumbles, then shouts, then mumbles, then shouts.
I'm getting a pattern, yeah, thank you.
It's just terrible. So, yeah, I won't be listening to this again. And it's just heightened my dislike of Needle Drop.
Right, that's the end of that one. You only went 1 minute 10, so well done.
That's all I've got to say.
Well done. Okay,
Matt. Now we're going to go to.
Okay, so the one I was most surprised about is Christine and the Quins with Chris.
Go.
And I was expecting this to be one of my favorites. I hadn't listened to it, but based on hearing the stuff before and knowing kind of what style of music it is, that's kind of should fit with what I like, because it kind of trades in this kind of really catchy pop music, but I just found the whole album, none of it really grabbed me at all. I liked Girlfriend because it's the most standout song on there, but really over the whole album there wasn't just that much going on for me. I think there was a distinct lack of hooks.
What? Listen to the right album. Were you listening to the French? Sorry, you've got 40 seconds. But were you listening to the French version? Carry on.
I listened to both versions.
I did as well.
And I by the end it was just washing over me. I think the main thing for me is that like a lot of albums on a bunch of albums on this list even use kind of these circular beats and use them in an interesting way. But I just found the kind of mundane overall, and I'm thinking I was thinking comparing it to say what we talked about last month with Feist, which was an amazing album with huge diversity, and I just didn't find that here. So that is why, like, it's a fine album. It just isn't.
Shut up, man.
We don't want to hear any more of your rubbish.
I mean, no.
We're going to come back to that. Go around the three.
Come back, but I'm just saying no now.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nick, which album are you most surprised to see at the top of an album of the year playlist?
Okay, I'm going to put. I don't know if I'm getting this right, but Khadja Bonet, Child Queen.
Go.
Okay, so it won't take me long because this is so talking about that question about what's most relevant to 2018. This is the most unbelievably irrelevant album to this period in music and period in culture and time. It's so unbelievably dated. It's just a terrible pastiche of like a 70s kind of drifting 70s vaguely hippie vibe. I've just found it so sort of futile. It just drove me insane. Futile. So and I don't know if I've got anything else to say. Literally, that was it. 30 seconds.
Fill the time a little bit.
No, I don't want to.
What did you think of?
I don't think it deserves it. And also, I'll say, I also thought it was a terrible choice by Piccadilly Records, who picked this one. Wasn't it Piccadilly Records?
Yeah.
And they also picked last year. We did one last year, didn't we? 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And who was that now? What's the name of that band?
I mean, I feel like I should be careful about this because I've since found out that I know someone who's married to the bassist in the band, so I don't want to
leave it alone then. Let's leave it alone.
Say it. But they were terrible.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate choice that time and an unfortunate choice this time as well.
Yeah, so luckily we weren't recording at the time when I really slagged that band off. And I don't know if she listens, but I'd rather not.
Fair enough.
You can tell me afterwards.
Friendship.
Yeah. So there we go. It was really, really weak. Really weak.
Okay. Right, well...
Cool. Well, you want to lay into me then?
What did we talk about?
He talked about Christine the Queen's having no hooks.
Yeah, let's talk to Matt first.
Literally laughable. Yeah. I mean, it's all it is a bunch of hooks.
Goya Soda. Can you find Christine and the Queens for me for a second, just so I can remember all the hooks. Goya Soda, $5. Doesn't matter. All of them.
Yeah.
Feel so good.
I'm going to go with Come See Girlfriend the Walker, doesn't matter, $5. Got every single song on the album.
Damn, what must a woman do has not got a hook? I mean, it is a hook. That's all it is.
If anything, you could complain that it's got too many hooks.
Yeah. What happened to you?
Then if there's too many, it's just like, it's mundane.
But you said there was no hooks. Does it fade out a lot? Because I know you hate fade outs. Is there a lot of fade outs or something?
If all it is hooks, is it then a hook anymore?
But it's not just hooks.
That's really existential, I don't know.
Yeah.
If a tree falls in the woods, is Matt still a twat? No, you're wrong. I mean, did you like a previous album?
Yeah.
I like the previous album. Your mind so much as well. I mean, I don't see how it's so radically different.
Yeah, this is what I don't get. Like, I could get you saying I don't like it as much as the first one, but to say some of the albums on this list that you've just said this is like more surprising than is kind of flummoxing to me.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it in the context of this list, right? It's definitely not near the top, right? And so,
I mean,
if we're
stop saying the word right.
If we're comparing it to the other best albums of the year, I don't think it belongs in that list. It's a fine album, but I just don't. It surprised me that it's hitting the top.
So to move us on away from. Well, briefly, I'm not really moving on from here because Nick's just brought up the Khadja Bonet. Are you saying that this is you prefer Khadja Bonet? Let's talk about Khadja Bonet. Do you prefer it to Christine?
See, the thing with Khadja Bonet, I actually had a kind of issue with her voice. I found it really annoying, and so I tried really hard. I've kind of given it the benefit of the doubt to a certain extent because I wasn't sure if it was just me not listening to it that much. Well, I listened to it a bunch, but not enjoying it that much because I found her voice so like distant and that it just felt so impersonal that I just didn't. I wasn't into it at all. It felt almost like Fleet Foxes or something like that, where they're just like off somewhere else singing about something else, and it's just not relevant.
It just drifts past you. I can totally see that.
Yeah, and so I liked some of the music, the instrumentation and the music. I just like the actual the singing really put me off that album. So I also agree with Nick on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I disliked it anywhere near as much as you two. I mean, I kind of find it a bit of a pleasant surprise, considering after the experience with Piccadilly Records before, I thought I would hate it. But I'm not going to get overblown about it. I didn't love it. It was decent. not amazing, kind of middle of the pack to me. But there's a couple of good songs. I like Mother Maybe. I like Delphine. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that one. Either of you want to shout at me for my view on Daughters, or are we kind of happy with Daughters now?
I mean, you think you're very, very wrong, and I think that it's obviously a band that's within a particular musical genre. So to say that a lot of the songs sound similar is a bit of a non-starter.
I didn't say they sound similar. I said they sound exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a different thing.
I think that's really stretching the point, and I don't think it's valid.
It sounds like a 42-minute long song with less sex in the middle.
No.
Yeah,
sorry,
I don't quite agree with that.
35-minute song with less sex in the middle? No? All right. No. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Matthew, Paul, it is time for your album of the year. You have 1.5 minutes once you've told us the name.
So my album of the year was Let's Eat Grandma, and I've actually forgotten what it's called.
It's called I'm All Ears.
I'm All Ears. Yeah, that's the one.
I love this album. It really does.
Go.
No, but this one kind of caught me by surprise because I'd heard the previous album and it was kind of interesting and a bit weird, and then they came out with something that took all this creativity and ideas that they had and really kind of stepped it up a notch. I feel like it's one of the most creative albums I've listened to in a while, and really kind of unique in their approach to kind of the pop music. And I think there is a lot of people making this kind of style of pop music that's a bit alternative, but I think they sit somewhere completely different to everyone else who's doing that style. Because I don't know. To me, this album, sometimes you feel like they're being very gentle, and then other times they come and hit you around the head. And they're just the way it opens and then transitions to the album as a whole kind of tells you that these are people who kind of know what they want to do, and they're taking you along this ride, and it's going to be different and unexpected. But that's okay. And so I'll leave it at that. How we doing?
Okay. You've got 16 seconds. Very good. First time you've not gone over. Do you want to go, mate?
Sure. I had sort of mixed feelings about it overall. I thought it had some really odd and generally interesting juxtapositions between pop hooks and pop kind of sensibilities and sort of semi-industrial synths, which are particularly noticeable from the start of the album. Actually, I think that was that Whitewater is true, and then also there's some in Hot Pink as well. That's actually quite. I think you said when you said hit you over the head. I think that's a good analogy. It sounds really really heavy for a moment there, and then switches back very dramatically. I also thought that in Falling Into Me had some really good dark synths in it as well. That was another one that I was particularly keen on. I would say that I still had a tough time with the vocals and with particularly songs like Hot Pink, which I think was a single, being kind of irritatingly kind of upbeat sometimes. It was just a bit too much sort of pop, too much pop, which is kind of amazing since I thought the Christian and the Queens wasn't too much pop, but this was a little bit crossed the line into slightly grating at the time. So I certainly didn't hate it, and I was expecting to not like it, I have to say. I think I'd seen one YouTube video.
Me and you watched the YouTube video and turned it off after about a minute and a half.
That's a good sign.
And I didn't want to. I was really not wanting to judge the fact that these are really young musicians. I didn't want to sort of make that be the decision for me. So, but
should I feel bad that that's what I'm going to do in a minute?
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, that was a bit of a tough one, but overall I thought it had some really interesting parts to it. Yeah.
Okay, so it was a mixed bag for me. Like we just said, we'd seen a live performance, and I'd actually caught them on some award show on telly, and expected to hate it because I just found them really annoying live. But hearing the instrumentation and hearing some of the stuff you've just been talking about, the sort of the really heavy background to some of the songs, they were a lot more interesting than I thought they would be. They're quite diverse as well, and I think then there's also occasions like It's Not Just Me, where they can write just like a really catchy pop song. Yeah. So they've got a lot going for them, and I do think I understand why this album has done really well and why people really love it, but the singing voices just drove me insane. Like, now, I'm going to say, first of all, that I work with teenagers. You know, I support teenagers every day, and I think they get really bad press, and the teenagers I work with are the most inspiring people I've ever met in my life. But these girls are why teenagers have got a bad reputation. They basically lived up to every bad stereotype about teenagers. They were a bit whiny, a bit spoiled. You kind of feel like they love themselves when they're singing because it's that sweet little girly voice, and they're all like, and it's just really annoying. And yeah, so it's better than I thought it would be, and it's much, much, much better than Daughters, but it didn't get much higher on my list than that, I'm afraid.
Very easy to make a comparison between Daughters and this, isn't it?
Well,
wow.
One was unlistenable and one was listenable. Like I said, all 9 albums apart from Daughters for me were at least very decent albums. Let's Eat Grandma had its really, really high points, but I couldn't get past the voices, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because a lot of the album is actually a direct response to the fact that the first album, a lot of the critics just dismissed them as kids and as being just...
How old were they for the first album? They were like 17 or something. Now.
Yeah, exactly.
How old were they? That's unbelievable.
And now they're...
It was just a collection of nursery rhymes.
This, I think, added a little bit more substance. But
yeah, I mean, there was a lot of substance there. I'm not gonna say there isn't. I do think musically they are actually really interesting.
There was also some lyrical maturity as well. I thought there was some interesting lyrical stuff going on.
I think they pulled a lot more out of the bag than I thought they would. But I just think, hopefully,
you just need to go and smoke a few cigarettes. Give them 20-pack a day.
Is it just lads that voices break?
Fair point, Matt.
Yeah, maybe when they get on the crack and whatever, and everything starts to go wrong, the next album will be, maybe it'll sound like Daughters Delivery, and it'll be terrible for another reason.
It'll be a good album then. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So next question and final question of the middle questions, if that makes any sense to anyone, is which album came closest to knocking your album of the year into second place? And obviously, we're just talking about the 6.
Yeah, not our 4
new ones, so don't pick
choices,
Idols, which you two have already said came in your second place. So.
Yes.
Right, Nick, what's the name of the album for you?
Yeah, the name of the album is Be the Cowboy by Mitski. And I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I didn't expect to do so when I first started listening to it because I thought it sounded... And some of the songs that Fran highlighted earlier, like Me and My Husband, I was... initially quite unsure about, but I thought the song construction was actually quite interesting, even from the opening song, the name of which I'm forgetting now, if I dig it out here. It was Geyser. And then Why'd You Stop Me and A Pearl as well. All had some really interesting sort of builds and some sort of sweeps from big to small, which was really nice. I also really like Two Slow Dancers, the last song, which I think is one that Fran mentioned earlier as well, incidentally. But I thought that was extremely beautiful ballad, really, really well executed. So ultimately, I listened to the album quite a bit. It was a good balance between having some meat on the bones and being listenable. In a way, although I don't think it's as good an album, it's actually more easily to listen to while still having some things going on than The Young Fathers. It was more kind of like clean than that, but it still had some oddball things going on, which I'm always attracted to. So yeah, I thought it was solid. There we go.
Well, that's the biggest surprise of the day so far to me. I'm going to go next.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. What you got? Which album came closest to knocking your album of the year into second place?
I'm ready now. So it was Devotion by Tirzah. I think you say Tirzah. So, yeah, this was the album I listened to the most. It was the album that grew on me the most. It's the one I've recommended to the most people. I found it kind of fascinating. It's a pop album, but with all the imperfections and rough edges left in. I think there's such simplicity at times, and with the blunt and honest lyricism, it felt like I was being invited to listen to my own little version of the album. It felt really intimate and honest. I just felt like it was, although it was really simple, it was also really creative. Like a lot of the songs, like Gladly and Fine Again, they started out feeling as if they were really smooth and even, but just when you felt everything was comfortable, they'd kind of trip you up along the way. And I also felt it was one of the only albums, one of only maybe 2 or 3 albums on this entire list which didn't have a clear low point. I think it's strong all the way through. But the title track, Devotion, was my favourite, and actually I think possibly one of my favourite songs of the last year. I just think it's an album that completely took me by surprise. I didn't know anything about her. It was one on the list. When I looked down the list, I'd probably heard of everyone apart from her and Khadja Bonet. I've just made that name up. But yeah, it really grabbed me, and I just think she's really got something really interesting. And I've heard a couple of old songs. I've gone back and they're really dancey, and she's just chilled it out on this album, and it's a really beautiful album, I think. So that's mine. Yes.
Wow. Perfect.
Spot on. Okay. So that's Matt's turn, I guess, now.
Which album came closest to knocking yours into second place, Matt?
So probably the most surprising thing is that I agree with Fran. It's Tirzah. And I think this was the most intimate album on the list. And it was, like Fran was saying, it's super minimal, but then it does kind of catch you sometimes with the way it's kind of produced and how kind of raw they left the vocals the entire way through. They didn't like smooth it out at all. It's just, it feels like kind of raspy, and like she is just in the room with you. She's in your headphones and she's telling you this just to you. And so I really liked how kind of simple and straightforward the whole experience was. Even like lyrically as well, it's like there's no metaphor, there's nothing masking what she's trying to get across. It's literally just she's telling you exactly how it is. And yeah, I actually been listening to this album since it came out, because I listened to an interview. Kate Tempest recommended this as her number 1 pick for the year.
Really?
Well, there you go.
Wow.
And so I went and started listening to it then, and was kind of taken aback. And yeah, Holding On is my favorite song of the year.
Yeah, it's great. And your favorite song of the year?
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's the one that beats everything else out.
Wow.
It's got that emotional resonance, but it's very catchy.
Carry on, mate. Just carry on. Because I agree with you.
That's it.
Because I agree with you. You can carry on.
Oh, that's nice. Bend the rules.
Wow. Well, that's another. I've just had 2 big surprises in that. I didn't expect Nick to even slightly like Mitski, and I didn't expect. I expected you to like Tirzah, but I didn't expect anyone else to like it as much as I did. So that's pretty cool. Do you want to talk about Tirzah, Nick?
I do, yeah. And I thought fundamentally this was a pretty weak album, all in all. And there's a few reasons for that. I thought it was really the intimacy and the simplicity you talk about. Struck me as more like a set of demos. It didn't seem to me fleshed out. There were a lot of ideas that didn't sort of drive to where they could have gone. They just sort of seemed like it was early versions of songs that never really got to where they were meant to go to. I don't think that there was potential in it, so I didn't hate it. But I didn't feel like it really delivered on anything very profound or very moving, particularly. I think a good example would actually be the last song, Reach High, which the first about minute of is just a kind of cycle of a very nice toned beat, but like nothing to it but that kind of very, very sparse. And it just seemed, I just kind of wanted it to move somewhere. I wanted it to go somewhere. And I just felt like it was some ideas thrown in, but it didn't build into a proper album for me.
I think maybe you haven't got a creative enough imagination or mind. I think that's your problem. I know you're a writer and you write music and all that, but I think basically you don't understand creativity. I think that's what this comes down to.
Okay, that seems fair. I won't be offended by that statement whatsoever. So it seems reasonable.
Do you not feel like the sort of what was interesting for me is the kind of idea that it came across as a smooth album in the first couple of listens, but when you listen closely, there is that kind of another depth to it where they are doing some kind of like
I wouldn't say smooth, really. I mean, you use the word smooth. I don't know if I really buy that. And to me, it was a bit more clunky. It's kind of like, again, like beats that were kind of off drum machines that were thrown together that didn't seem to carry through. And
Kate Tempest disagrees with you.
I know, and that does trouble me because I absolutely love Kate Tempest, but that's worrying. But all the same, I've got to hold to my position on this.
I think there's lending to what Fran was saying. The kind of style lends to the perception that it's kind of smooth. And then I think once you actually get into it, then you realise
there's nothing to it.
The frailty of it. And so if you don't like spend ages listening to like this type of music, then or are deep into drum machine beats, then you might not. And you would straight away see the fact that it's a bit more raw.
This reminds me a little bit of the conversation me, you, and Nirmal had, Nick, over last year's albums of the year when I actually chose Tirzah as my favourite, because it's a different album, but it's also got some similarities in, like, it's quite pared back and it's quite emotional, like a emotional music about relationships mainly, which you also didn't like then, because I think maybe you find it hard to connect with young people and relationships and that are going wrong because you've been married for 42 years or something. So I think that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
And you're not, all those things I just said about you. I've just insulted you a lot, haven't I?
You have, yeah. But that's okay. I can take it. It's fine. So you went with Mitski. I don't know if you've already spoken about Mitski, haven't you, Matt?
I spoke a little bit.
And I've already spoken about Mitski.
Yeah. So we can jump into
go on to my album of the year,
one.
which I don't believe I can get through in a minute and a half, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
So my album of the year is Dance Music by Mastersystem. So, putting this album on this list has been a really good exercise for me, because I thought maybe I was choosing it for sentimental reasons, but listening to it as part of this playlist showed me that it can live with any of the albums on here. So this album was released just a couple of months before Scott Hutchinson died. I spoke about him in a previous podcast. He was the lead singer of Fran Rabbit. And there were a lot of clues to what was going to happen in the music. So when I talked about Frightened Rabbit on the podcast a couple of months ago, I discussed how their songs were often about mental health, but usually with a message of hope thrown in there. Now, this is the opposite of that. This is an album in which Scott really put his struggles out there and sort of forced you to listen. So the songs like Teething and Wasted Daylight, which are completely savage in their honesty, be about his inability to see his own self-worth. And the song that closes the album, which is called Bird is Bored of Flying, I think is as powerful an analogy as the Frightened Rabbit song Modern Leper was 10 years previously. So, the album's obviously a really hard listen at times, but it's my album of the year because I think there can be very few albums that are so open and honest about someone's struggles with mental health and their, eventually their suicidal feelings, at the same time as being so lyrically breathtaking and interesting. And even before the sad news about Scott in May, it was really exciting to hear him get involved in a heavier post-punk style album. This kind of suited his more pessimistic side and allowed him to really put that side out there. So personally, I think this is an absolute masterpiece.
And we'll never hear anything else about it.
And one of my favourite albums in a very long time. That was my last sentence. So that's me. Who wants to go?
I don't mind.
Matt? Yeah, go for it, Matt. Yeah.
I'll go. Right. So I didn't even realise this existed. And so I was quite pleasantly surprised when you suggested it, and I was like, what the hell is this? And then I Googled and was like, cool. And so we obviously talked about them in the past. Yeah. And I'm a fan of Frightened Rabbit, and the other brothers have been in bands which I've
so one's in Editors and one's in, I can't remember the name of the other band, but
But, he's only recently joined Editors, so he's responsible for some of their newer music,
right?
Which is like hit and miss, but still. For me, it was a really good album. Lyrically, obviously, it's fantastic, and he was a fantastic songwriter and lyricist. Musically, I enjoyed the album, but it's very much a kind of callback album to like 90s, 80s indie rock.
Yeah.
Or not 90s, 2000s indie rock. And a lot of the time I found that fun, and then sometimes I was just like, this feels like I'm listening to Foo Fighters, and maybe I don't want to listen to
Foo Fighters is a bit much, mate. Foo Fighters is a bit much.
Just musically.
No, still too much.
And so, I think of this genre, there's people making musically potentially better music, but as a package and considering the circumstances, I enjoyed it a lot, but it maybe wouldn't be in my top 10.
Fair enough.
Okay, I'll jump in then. So I was not aware, like Matt was not aware of this band, and also, as usual, didn't take the time to do any research.
Yeah.
As usual. So I just listened to the album for a while before I did actually Google it ultimately, because I was so confused about why Fran would choose it in terms of the genre, you know. So it really was very, very surprising to me. Now I can see, of course, why there's a connection there. I actually, generally speaking, really liked it. I thought it was really nice tones. It was sort of intricately built, musically speaking. Now, lyrically, it was very strong, as you would expect from him. And I did wonder if, as I was listening to it, where have I kind of heard this before? Honestly, I sort of felt like I both knew the voice and the sort of tone of the lyrics and stuff. So I should have realised more quickly. To me, it sounded a lot more. I wouldn't say Foo Fighters. I would say Biffy.
I don't know Biffy that well.
Okay, so I think that's a more similar band. But in any case,
older Biffy.
Yeah, that's true. Early stuff. Yeah. So. So I really liked it. I literally, if I was to nitpick something, I thought there were a couple of openings to songs that were a little bit sort of not that inventive, and sadly, the opening sort of 30 seconds of the very first song, I thought to myself, the first time I heard it, I thought, oh, this is going to be quite a generic sort of post-punk rock album. And the intricacies that came through after that point, both lyrically and musically, I wasn't aware of, obviously, at that point. So after a start that I wasn't really that impressed with, I actually really liked it. So in general, really good album. Yeah, I'd definitely listen to it again.
Good stuff.
Cool.
Right.
Okay, so
cool. Well, we're pretty much
just going to talk about albums. If there's any we didn't cover,
one left.
Only one we didn't talk about.
Yeah, and that's Double Negative by Low. It's the only one which was Drowned in Sounds album of the year. So, Matt, you chose Drowned in Sounds. So, do you want to start us off on Low?
Sure. I thought this album it was interesting in parts. It felt like it was weird because a couple of times I put it on in my living room when people were around, and it just didn't feel right. And it only felt right when I kind of had it on with headphones by myself. And I found it to be a strangely calming album. It seemed like a lot of what they were talking about, from or the way I was receiving the music, is just like acceptance and calmness and in face of like all the stuff that's going on at the moment. So it kind of, that was uneasy for me, like that feeling of just take what's going on, in the political atmosphere.
I mean, I've got to point out that was exactly the reason you said a Go Team was a good album, and I had a go at you for that. So,
well, that was in a joyful way. It was in a positive way. This was just like, just acceptance and live with it.
Say that,
so you don't be really happy about Trump and the world.
If I can jump in though, to me, and maybe I didn't pick up some of the things you're picking up, but lyrically, but to me, the album was actually quite a lot more small scale than that. It wasn't a political album to overall. To me, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if you disagree with that.
I've got one lyric here, which is, "It's not the end; it's just the end of hope."
Yeah, I can see that then. Yeah.
And there were other points in the album where it was talking. I felt like it was talking into a bigger sense, but I could be reading.
I've read a fair few reviews of it that do actually, and a lot of them pick out the exact line you just picked out, Matt, as saying that it is quite a political album. That is its attention. But I mean, I can't say that I picked up that personally, but
to me, I didn't particularly get that, and to me, it sounded quite a lot smaller scale in terms of lyrically. Now, in fact, I'll talk about that in a moment. But I'll just say first of all, I really enjoyed. Tonally, the album, I thought it had some really beautiful pacing, and it allowed itself to breathe, and that's the calming thing I think you're talking about, Matt, potentially.
It
just felt
it wasn't in a rush.
Yeah, it wasn't in a rush, but it wasn't tedious at any point. I really found some of the tonal breakdowns of the music, and I was playing it. Actually, my 10-year-old son was like, "Oh, I think it's glitching out," because he's a computer gamer. Yeah. So he was like, "I think it's glitching out." I was like, "No, it's not glitching out. It's doing exactly what it wants to do." You know. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that in general. So the pacing was good, and obviously vocally, I know a fair bit of Low stuff before, some of Low stuff before, and she's an amazing lyricist. They're both good. She in particular, the drummer is a really amazing lyricist for the band. The only thing I'd say, and this is related to this issue of the size and the scope of the lyrics, is there were a couple of instances where I felt like the lyrics didn't really juxtapose very well with the music. There's one in particular, and I can't remember the song now, which opens with the first line of lyrics is "I saw you at the grocery store." Do you remember that song? Well, it's like second or third song, and I just thought
sounds like Common People.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to me, to have a massively sweeping kind of I don't want to say grandiose, but detailed sound. And then to be saying something quite mundane like that didn't really gel. And there's more than one example of that, but that's just the one I wrote down. But so to me, maybe I should have picked out the political stuff more. But in general, I thought there were some moments where the lyrics didn't fit with the music. But the music was really, really good in general. I enjoyed it.
Okay, well, this was probably the one that, this isn't a word, but ungrew on me the most. It kind of.
You're right. That's not a word.
It's not a word, but I'm having it.
I'd like to officially tell you for my qualifications in English that's not a word.
I've got creative writing masters. We're allowed to make up words.
Died? Can you just go with died?
Look, it didn't die on me. That would be harsh. That would be over the top because, like, the first couple of runs through the whole playlist, I expected this to be possibly the standout album for me of the new ones. It was. I found it was the one that grabbed me most to start with. I think that was kind of the trip-hoppy sort of Massive Attack tones to parts of it. And I think there's a song called Fly which still lives up to that for me and is still one of the best songs on this playlist in total. But I found myself going less and less back to this album. And probably ended up being one of the ones I listened to the least without hating it.
I wonder if that's because I thought there was a lot of My Bloody Valentine in it, which we talked about in a playlist some time ago. Tonally,
possibly.
That album,
but you could hear the lyrics, you could hear the song, you could hear the singing.
I see there's a difference, but I do think that granular, broken down sound.
I mean, if we're going to compare the two, this was way ahead in my eyes. But yeah, this has been at the top of a lot of lists this year, and this has been top 10 in most lists I've seen, and I kind of don't fully get that, but maybe lower. I know they're a very popular band and haven't been around for a long time. Is that right? Been around a long maybe there's a lot of like music writers that really love them, and we're glad to see them.
Very kind of cool as well, with the critics, as it were. I'm not trying to dismiss what they have achieved, but I think that they've always got that on their side.
But I think it didn't blow me away. It would sit probably exactly in the middle of the pack for me, next to Khadja Bonet. They would be my two middle albums in the pack. So so nothing majorly special to me. But yeah, I think that's kind of us. Until
you tried to be right, but you failed.
Well, mind. It's kind of positive. Right, so top threes and bottom threes, people. Should we do bottom threes first?
Let's do bottom threes, yeah. So, in reverse order.
Yeah, so Nick, bottom three in reverse order, please.
Bottom three in reverse order. Number 3, Tirzah with Devotion.
So that's
my third worst of the top 10. That makes any sense to anyone who's listening to this. Secondly, Let's Eat Grandma was my second worst of the set, which altogether was a decent set, I think. And then it's no surprise that Khadja Bonet's Child Queen was far and away the weakest of these 10.
Okay, so Matt, bottom three.
Low.
Low is the third.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's Khadja Bonet.
Yeah.
Then it's Christine and the Queens.
What, Christine and the Queens is the worst album on the list for you?
Sam is who was on this podcast a couple of times, is going to go crazy. He loves Christine and the Queens, I think, if I remember correctly.
So, he also loves Let's Eat Grandma, so he's not going to enjoy either mine or yours.
He's going to be on mine as well. Sorry, Sam.
Okay, so for me, bottom three, Let's Eat Grandma gets the third worst album on the list. Mitski's Be the Cowboy is the second worst on the list. And Daughters is by far... I'm going to give it an extra point because it's so far down.
No, that's not allowed.
Extra point?
You can't do that. No, but also, seriously, you haven't even put that Khadja Bonet in the bottom three.
No,
that's unbelievable.
It wouldn't even be in my bottom four.
Wow.
Middle of the pack.
Unbelievable. Yeah. All right, then.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go with the best albums of the year now, will we?
Right. I mean, it's getting complicated for me to work this out, but yeah, let's go with the best albums of the year. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first again. Shall we go around the same order?
Okay. Yeah.
So, no big surprises, I don't think. So, third place is Mitski, which I really, really enjoyed overall and grew on me a lot steadily as I listened to it. And then number 2, I talked about already, was Idols, which was so close but didn't quite make it compared to Young Fathers.
Okay. So Young Fathers stuck to the top.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt?
number 3, I have Young Fathers.
Okay.
Number 2, Idols.
Yeah.
And Let's Eat Grandma right at the top.
Wow, that's... You didn't...
Where it belongs.
Were you sure about that?
Yeah.
Are you
Have you
sure?
thought about it?
Are you sure?
I have it written in my list. Idols and Let's Eat Grandma are the same. But I feel like I need to earn
can't do
Let's
that,
Eat Grandma
that's
some
not
extra
allowed.
points at the moment. So,
Okay.
Defend himself, yeah, exactly.
So, third place for me was Idols.
Okay.
Second place for me was Tirzah.
Nice.
And
Absolutely delusional.
in first place for me was obviously Mastersystem.
Right.
So I'm going to do you two chat on yourself. I'm going to do a quick bit of maths.
Right, so
I think
in
it's gonna be
about
quite quick.
15 minutes, Fran will have worked out how to add.
yeah, I was going to say,
6
why do we have
numbers
him doing
together.
math?
So
Yeah,
our
exactly.
worst,
Yeah.
I've got it already. Our
Okay.
worst album of the year
Yes.
is Khadja Bonet's Child Queen.
Thank you.
I mean, I know that we only did 10 albums.
yeah.
But we are
Worst of the top 10.
counting that
yeah.
as the worst
Yeah.
album of the year. In second place of the worst albums of the year, actually joint second place is
It's worst of the best.
is Let's Eat Grandma, which got
I
2
just can't
points
believe
from
it for Matt. He's going to reach down the
Outrageous.
mic and punch us on it.
Surely I
points
get
from me, 1
minus
point from
3
Nick.
points for it being top of my list.
No, you don't. But Daughters, because I put it in first place, it gets 3 points. That's the joint second worst album of the year.
Okay, so it's the same. They're both the same, aren't they?
Yeah, and then the others are all just So that's it. We've got
What
2.
about Christine and the Queens?
That wasn't in the bottom 3.
Oh no, you also gave that 3 as well. So we've got
Yeah.
3 second worst albums. So that's our bottom 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our bottom 3 are
So Khadja Bonet made it out
Khadja
of that.
Bonet, Daughters, and Let's Eat Grandma, and
We all
Christine the
dislike
Queen.
different
We've got
things.
4. We've got
A 4-way tie with
All
it.
right, so the top album of the year is actually tied between Young Fathers and Idols. They both got 4. Oh no, I gave Idols, but so Idols is the winner. Idols is our album of the year.
Idols did it, okay. And
Idols
that's in
chose
Nirmal's
Natural
honour as well,
Resistance,
since he had
so
picked
there
it,
you go,
so that's
Nirmal.
good. Yeah. You
Young
got what you
Fathers in
wanted, Nirmal.
second and Mastersystem in third. So basically, all the ones we picked, none of the others got on. So we are the music experts, except for Matt, who's in the bottom 3.
What a surprise. We picked the albums we like most for this, yeah.
Well, I just think that shows don't listen to Needle Drop.
No, that's why Needle Drop's so unsuccessful, compared to us.
Yeah,
That's
but
why
we're,
you got 1.8
but we're
million
real.
people listening
Needle
to
Drop would say
everybody,
absolutely anything to get people to like him. He only said Daughters was the top album because he wanted people to say, "Oh, you're so different. You like this album."
Wrong. No, I think it's completely unfair and unreasonable. He's an interesting critic. He says a lot of interesting things. I don't always agree, but I think he's good. I'm not having that.
He's an arse. I hope he doesn't listen.
Good job, Frank.
And bad mouth us.
Really good. Yeah, nice one.
I like you really, mate. Okay, so let's go to next time.
Yes.
So Nick will be the man in charge next time.
I will.
I'll start
Nice.
then. I will be bringing... It'll be just a normal episode again, back to normal next time, for the first time in a while. My albums are It Won't Be Like This All the Time by The Twilight Sad and Some Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt.
And I am suggesting Sharon Bonetton's Remind Me Tomorrow, and Fiddler is Almost Free.
And I will be doing the classic, which is Prince's Sign of the Times. Thanks for Sam's recommendation of that
cheers,
in the
Sam.
conversation before we did this. And I'll also be talking about Why I Love Talking Heads' Fear of Music. And actually, I have another friend, Sam, coincidentally in America, who I was asking about this, and he disagrees. This is their greatest album, but I'll be making a case for why Fear of Music is the best album. Of Talking
Okay,
Heads. Yeah,
cool. All right,
Cool.
so that's it. Just
I'm
as we
excited.
said at the start, let's if any of you enjoyed the podcast or enjoy us in general, because we're wonderful, then subscribe to the podcast.
2 of us are. One of us.
Follow us on Twitter at Picky Bastards, and if it's after March 6th, come and see us at pickybastards.co.uk. And thanks for listening.
Thanks a
And
lot.
you can find the playlist at bit.ly/Picky
can.
Bastards playlist.
And you'll also be able to find it on the website once the website is up. Unless
Yeah.
I mean, we can stop saying bit.ly at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
The last time.
It is. Right.
Nice one. See you
Bye-bye.
soon.
Congratulations to Idols.
Bye.